Hi, everybody, and welcome back. As always, thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to welcome back a former guest of our show that we had met several years ago when we first premiered. If you don't remember Deborah Hurley, take a look at her clip here. She was battling depression for more than 20 years. But what type of depression were you diagnosed with? Because there is many out there. I believe that you were diagnosed with the most common type of depression. Major depression?
Yes, they called it a major depression without psychosis, so I was never psychotic, but definitely major depressive disorder, which is really pretty serious. It's, you know, I think that although depression is, we're talking about it much more, I still think it's really misunderstood, and I still think it's taken very lightly.
Deborah, thank you so much for opening the doors of your
Jason.
home to us.
Thank
I've
you.
been very excited about your follow-up today because we met you several years ago, as I said. And I have to say, looking at you now and looking at that clip, you're a completely different person now. You're smiling, you're laughing. I mean, you really feel good about life
I
now.
do. I feel great. It's been a full 3 years that I'm feeling amazing, and it's a whole new life. Yeah, a whole new life. Feel great.
And you've been battling, like I said earlier, for 20 years.
Yes,
with
I started,
depression.
I was about 23, 44 now. So, and I've been well for 3 years, so pretty much my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just kind of like a little brief history, I mean, what do you think had caused your depression all those years ago?
I think, you know, for me, my depression was a combination of some emotional issues that needed to come out, I needed to work through, as well as chemical imbalance. I think childbirth kind of paved the way for my depression to start, but then once it unleashed itself, it kind of just picked up momentum, and some issues that were going on inside just kind of resurfaced. So I think for me, it was a combination of both, to be truly honest. Yeah.
So were you ever diagnosed with postpartum depression when you became a mom?
For a brief period, when my kids were just first born, they did say postpartum, and then that diagnosis kind of quickly went out the window once they realized the severity of where I was going. So I honestly wouldn't classify what I ever had as postpartum. I think that childbirth just kind of unleashed it, but it was definitely always diagnosed as a major depressive disorder.
Wow.
So.
And again, 3 years later,
3
and you're
years,
under
yeah.
several treatments.
Yes.
You have a book out.
Yes.
In fact, you've written part 2 of your book,
I did.
Fragments of Hope, which we were introduced to your book 2 years ago also. You've added a little continuation onto it. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I continued part 2 because I just felt that there was more that needed to come out, more that needed to be said. Part 2 is more about my recovery, about how I got on my feet and what I'm doing to stay on my feet. That's really the big issue. You know, I don't just want to tell my story. I want to share with people how they could survive depression and actually live a beautiful life living with it. So I definitely still define myself as somebody who still has depression. I don't think it ever goes away. I just think for me right now it's in remission, but it's something I'll always have, and I always have to keep a watchful eye for. So, but part 2 was just my way of kind of really revealing the hope, the light at the end of the tunnel. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, I just can't get over your smile. I mean, you
Thanks.
didn't have the smile 2 years ago when I
No.
first met you, so
Yeah.
things have really been going great for you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
And it's so great to see you like this, and thank you again for opening your doors of your home to us for this follow-up today. So can you tell us, during your battle of depression, I mean, how did you kind of cope with it, and what did you do on your own when, you know, doctors weren't able to help you at the time, or they didn't know how to help you?
You know, I was a young mom in my 20s, so like other moms who are feeling overwhelmed by motherhood and just the stress of being, you know, a housewife and all of that other stuff, I wasn't offered a lot of help. Doctors, I think 19 years ago, didn't really know as much as they know now, that's for sure. So I think that I did the best I could. I tried whatever medication was given to me at those times. I did go to therapy. I did the very best I could with the information that I had, which at that point felt like so little compared to what I know now. You know, it's such a whole new world today, and I feel like there's so many options available and so many ways to keep yourself afloat. And I just think too many people give up. You know, I guess my message really is it's a really lethal illness, honestly, and to just be here surviving, speaking about it is a huge thing, and I just hope to touch somebody's life.
Absolutely.
Who has it, and just tell them to hang on and give them that hope that they're looking for.
Did you go through a lot of trial and error process?
Yes, yes.
What was that like?
You know, I was very resistant to medication, and I hear that from some people, that they'll take something and it works for a little while, and then it kind of wears off, and then they're back to square one, and they get really discouraged. I was very much like that. So, you know, in my 19 years of suffering, I probably tried about 13 different antidepressants. Wow. Each one proved to be effective for a little while, and then it just kind of stopped working. So it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of hopelessness, a lot of hanging on to hope, a lot of doctors, a lot of everything. But I'm in an amazing place now, and I don't think that is a mistake. I think there's definitely a reason for it, and I've just gained so much knowledge over the past 19 years that over this illness on how to overcome it, how to overthrow it, because I feel like it really takes a hold of so many people and conquers them.
And you never gave up. You're still not giving up.
I will never give up.
And that's a big part of it. I think for most people, I mean, there's somebody very close to me that's kind of going through the same thing, and she kind of feels like she's giving up, but just because I know her, I know she's not going to, but I'm sure there are more people that feel like that. I mean, what's your advice to them who want to give up and think that there's something wrong with them, that they're never going to get better?
Yeah. Boy, my advice to them is just hold on. Life is, you know, what I've learned is that we're all you know, we all have some type of affliction. We all have some type of pain, illness, heartache, whatever it is. And I think when I fully embraced that this was my thing, my cross, that's when I stopped fighting it, and I just kind of said, okay, well, I'm gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna live with it. I'm not gonna let what I was given in life consume me and defeat me. So, you know, my message to them would be, if you're feeling it and if you're thinking it, chances are a lot of other people are too. You know, so it's hard to feel hopeful when you're feeling it alone, but I'm definitely here to say that I'm living proof.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
There's one treatment that you spoke very highly of, known as TMS, and that is transcranial magnetic stimulation.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that, and how has it helped you, and what is the process of it?
I had TMS done in February of 2011, and I did it because I was a person suffering who was not responding to standard treatments, such as medication therapy, and all of the things, you know, you do to get well. My body just would not respond positively. Like we said before, it would for a little while, and then it would just kind of fizzle out, and I would go back to not feeling well. So my doctor really felt that after 19 years, this was a great option for me. TMS is, it was FDA approved in 2008, and it's a form of treatment for severely depressed people who, what it is it's kind of similar to an MRI. You sit down in a dentist-looking chair. The doctor kind of programs this little coil and puts it on your scalp. The little coil is placed on the scalp, and magnetic pulses go through it down into the brain, and they stimulate the part of the brain that controls your mood. And this is a procedure that lasts 6 weeks. I went in for 5 days a week for 6 weeks, 45 minutes every day, and that really proved to be life-saving for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, so you absolutely highly recommend.
I do.
If it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's out there. So many people still do not know it exists. It's a real thing. I didn't know anything about it until my doctor brought it up to me. There are doctors on Long Island that do it. There's doctors in the city. There's TMS centers. It's a huge treatment that's available, absolutely.
And like anything, I'm sure there's side effects. Did you encounter any sort of side effects from it?
Honestly, the one side effect I had was the ends of my hair, like just the ends of my hair on the top and on the ends they were very brittle and dry. Other than that, I had absolutely no side effects. Okay. Yeah, none.
I mean, obviously everybody is different and people would react differently.
Absolutely, yeah. It's supposed to be a very safe treatment. You're awake. There's no sedation. It's not anything that you need to be hospitalized for. People get their TMS treatment and go straight to work. It's just, it's a very simple procedure when you're in there. I think that after the third or fourth day of my treatment, I started to see a difference. By week 2, my depression and anxiety had just kind of lifted. And by week 6, I was feeling amazing.
Wow.
And I've been well for a full 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I
definitely am a TMS, advocate. And, if anybody has any questions about it, I'm more than happy to answer them. I didn't have anybody to go to. I didn't have anybody that I knew had it. So that was a little bit hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, were you nervous the first time going into it? What was
Yes.
going through your mind?
What scared me the most? What scared me the most was if I had the treatment and it didn't work, how would that make me feel? Because I felt like that was kind of my last option. When I sat with my doctor, I honestly told her that I wasn't sure if I would make it another year or even the next 6 months. And I meant it. So we proceeded forward with this. So my biggest fear was, what if I did this and it didn't work? Then where would that leave me? I wasn't afraid of the treatment itself. I was just afraid of it not working. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Other than that, I couldn't be happier with the results.
Wow.
I really couldn't be.
That's amazing, because
Yeah.
3 years ago, you wouldn't have said that. I mean, you were really at a very low.
I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, did you contemplate with suicide?
Absolutely.
If you don't mind my asking.
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. I planned it a lot. I never took action on it because I was always really afraid of it, and I really chickened out. But the thoughts were there, and I went as far as planning things, in full throttle. But I never took action upon it because I was always really adamant that I wouldn't leave my children. That was the big thing that kept me here was being a mom. So, yeah.
Oh, good for you. I mean, prior to the TMS treatment, I mean, were there any other treatments that sort of work, kind of work, but obviously not as effective as this?
Honestly, there wasn't. The only other treatments that I had was really medication. And obviously therapy to work through issues, but other than that, there's not a heck of a lot out there for depression. That's a safe option. There's treatments that you would, there's electric shock, but that's not anything I would ever consider.
Right.
So yeah, other than the TMS and medication, I haven't really tried anything else, but we did all the possibilities over the 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
I know, you're just such a different person.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at you now, and I just see such a difference from when I met you 2 years ago. It's
you.
just so incredible, and there's no doubt that you're bringing hope to others out there that are going through, because whether people realize it or not, depression is very common, whether it's a clinical depression or another type of depression or anxiety.
Yes.
I mean, you're really bringing a lot of hope to people out there. What is your day-to-day life like now? Like, how do you maintain this high that you have now?
Mm-hmm. I think what I know now that I didn't know 20 years ago or 10 years ago or even 5 years ago is that depression is not something that just goes away, that you recover from. It's something that needs to be managed. So what my daily life is like, I live my life planning and looking into the future with an awareness. I make sure that the things I do, the people I'm with, the places I go, the responsibilities I take on are not going to be damaging to me in any way. Whereas in the years prior, I never really thought about that. But I've learned how to live with this illness and live a beautiful life effectively. But that takes work, and that takes trial and error. And I've had a lot of that. So my life today is great, but I also realize that that's also temporary. Like, I realize that relapse is highly possible for me. And I go through my days and my weeks and my months planning and just making sure that I do everything I can do to keep this illness at bay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably don't want to dwell on the fact that, I can relapse or this can happen to me again. I mean, you really want to live to the fullest. I mean, you also have sort of a checklist, if you will, of things that you do to maintain your depression and keep it at bay.
I do. You know, I've learned a lot through the last 19 years, and there's nothing like life experience to give you those lessons. So what I've learned is that medication and therapy, being really diligent with that, is a huge, huge piece to the puzzle. I get a lot of sleep. I make sure that I do not get sleep deprived. I've taken a lot of responsibility for my problems, my troubles. I don't point the finger at anybody. I used to point the finger at people in my life who I felt caused my pain, and I stopped doing that. And I kind of took accountability for those issues and dealt with them on my own. Wow. So there's a lot of things you can do to just keep yourself from falling again. But again, that takes just being aware of your body, being aware of your moods, and taking the time out to do that for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, how are your relationships now with your family now, as opposed to maybe 3 years ago or even longer than that?
Completely different. Totally different. My husband is ecstatic because he feels like he has a new wife. He's so happy. We're planning a vacation together.
Oh my goodness.
It's, he hung in there for 20 years, but he has me back. And he has me back healthier and happier.
Wow.
So that's a beautiful thing right there.
Absolutely.
The kids have a mom who has persevered, who has shown them how to fight through, and not give up. And my relationship with my parents and my siblings and my friends is pretty strong. They know, they all know, and they're aware of what I have because I haven't held back about it. I'm not. Obviously, I'm not a very private person, so I'm very forthcoming with what I need and what I can handle and what I can't and what I can have on my plate and what pushes me over. So my relationships with them are healthy, because I make sure of that. I make sure that they are.
Absolutely. Now, could you have said the same thing 3 years ago or longer than that?
No, wow. Absolutely not. There's no, I think that the things I know now about depression and this kind of illness and the little tidbits of wisdom and knowledge that I've learned have had to come through life experience. And sometimes, you just have to walk that dark road by yourself to get there. I feel like I'm finally there, and I feel like the information that I have is with me to stay. And if I can just pass some of that along to help somebody else, maybe not have to travel down such a long and painful journey, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit before we started taping that you did some public speaking at Stony Brook University, and you were just blown away by the amount of students in their 20s that are kind of going through the same thing. I mean, what was that experience like for you?
That was one of the most rewarding experiences. I think that I totally relate to these kids because my depression started when I was, 19. I was kind of very melancholy. It didn't really come out until after I had kids, but I think it was always there. So when I see, a college kid who confides in me and tells me that, my heart kind of breaks, and I just want to share what I know and tell them to get the help and to not be embarrassed and to not be ashamed and not be afraid. It takes courage to step up and say, I'm not feeling good. I need to go to the doctor. But we all do, and that's okay. I think that for some reason people who feel depressed are so ashamed of what they have. I don't feel that way. I feel just the opposite. I almost feel a sense of strength that if you can fight this illness and overcome this illness, there's not a heck of a lot you can't do.
Absolutely.
So it kind of gives me strength. So I would definitely tell a youngster, or I hope to get into some colleges and talk to some more kids, because that had a big impact on me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, too, when you're that young, I mean, depression isn't a female disease or a male disease.
No.
I mean, it can happen to anybody. But I think at that age, you don't always have a name for what you're feeling either. So you may have given them a name for things that they don't understand why their body is feeling like this. And I think you were at a stage at that point, too, a long
absolutely.
time ago.
I think what's hard with kids is that, parents might just view them as being moody. They're just going through, their teenage years and they're being rebellious or whatever. And sometimes that's where the depression symptoms could mask themselves behind, just normal adolescent moodiness. But and I think that that's where sometimes kids get overlooked. They do say something to their moms or dads, and it kind of just gets lumped into a little category of being like somewhat normal, like for their age. But I think that my biggest advice would be to listen to your gut, to listen to your heart. If your heart tells you that something's not right, and this is more than just feeling irritated or stressed about school or stressed about life, then that's usually you're on the right track.
Wow. Okay. Well, Debbie, thank you. We're just going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away. If you love The Jason Galka Show, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to thejasonshow@yahoo.com. Welcome back. Today we are in the home of Deborah Hurley, who's a former guest of our show that we met several years ago, who had battled depression for more than 20 years. And after being on treatment for 3 years, of a treatment known as TMS, she is here today with big smiles. Welcome back, Deborah. Thank you again for having us here today. So very quickly, before we have to end the show in a little while, I want to talk about how important a support system is. When you're battling depression, how important was it to you to have somebody there supporting you and being there for you?
Being supported is huge. It's I'm going to be completely honest, it's not something I had a lot of. So I had my husband who understood what I was going through, but ultimately, he had to go out and earn a living. So he left and I was home alone with this illness. We lived upstate. I did not have any family around. I had no friends around. And that made it a lot more difficult. If family members and friends could support someone during depression, I think that would make it a lot easier. I think that people who are depressed, ultimately what they really want is to be heard. I think they want to be taken seriously. They don't want anybody or need anybody telling them that what they're feeling is not justifiable, it's in their head, they have nothing to feel this way about. They want somebody to say, I hear you. I know exactly, I hear the words you're saying and I'm going to be there for you. I think it's a huge aspect of getting well. I do.
Wow. So it's not that you didn't have the support of your husband. He's stuck by you all these years.
He did.
But this was really something that you had to take into your own hands and deal with on your own.
Yes.
And I think that's something that people not that they don't understand, but they feel like they need support.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true.
No. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your illness. It was my illness. It's not anything that he was ever able to feel for me, take away from me, alleviate any of my symptoms. There was just nothing he can do. So it was mine and mine alone. Wow. So yes, he was there standing by me and loving me, but the truth is it was me and that monster. And I just had to I had to fight it as best I could, and really it came down to my will to live. So, you know, support's a great thing, but a lot of people don't have it. I didn't have a lot of it. And it was really just me fighting on my own.
Wow.
And that's a biggie. I don't want people to think that they can't get well because they don't have the proper support system. Yes, it would help, but you can still get well even without it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a big message
Yeah.
because just like you said, they feel they need to rely on that, and that's not
No.
necessarily the case. It certainly helps, but not everybody has that.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the problem.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
wow.
So.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much.
Thank you
Let's
so
talk
much,
about
Jason.
your website. If anybody
Yeah.
has any questions, how they can get in touch with you. You're an open book.
I'm an open book.
A book of knowledge now, right?
Thanks. Yeah. The website, I just created this website, just a place where people can go and kind of see what I've been up to, what I'm doing. I'm still writing. I still love to write. So they can kind of get a peek at some of that. They can definitely go take a look at the book.
Your book is relaunched now with a part 2.
Yeah, it's relaunched. They can order it through the website or on Amazon. And they can definitely contact me, ask me questions, you know, give me any feedback or whatever anybody would like to say. I'd love to hear it.
Excellent. Well,
So.
Debbie, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
always so
Jason.
great to see you. I mean, you're
appreciate
one
it.
of the guests that we think often of
Thank
because
you.
you did have such a touching story, and no doubt you've touched somebody's life
I
tonight.
hope it helps.
So I thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much. If you have a story you'd like to share with us here on the show, send us an email to thejasonshow@yahoo.com, and you can visit our website as well. Thank you as always for watching. We'll see you next time.